Alrighty, we should be live. Let me go and check. And there we are. Just escape a little bit. Alrighty. Alright, I'm gonna keep my phone. I don't think anybody's watching yet, but y'all gonna have to bear with me a little bit, because I'm not 100% sure how everything's turning out right now. But I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. And just a heads up, there's about a 10 to 15 second delay between what y'all say and what I see. So if you ask a question, I will answer it. Just give me a minute. Okay, I see Maria's watching. Hey, Maria. Alright, so I'm going to get started. I'm just going to work my way from top to bottom and show everything. Just all the tracks, what we recorded, and talk a little bit about how we recorded it. For those of you that don't know, this is Northern Lights Suplex. I've been fortunate enough to work with them a lot. Very awesome dudes, very tight musicians. But that being said, they are punk and not magicians. I wish I could be a magician. That would make this a lot easier. But yeah, Northern Lights is, you know, they're punk. And that being said, I went into it saying, you know, we need to keep it as raw as possible. And that's what I feel like we did. I didn't edit any of the drums, any of the guitars. They're all unedited. You'll see little cuts here. That's where we maybe spliced together 2 takes or something, but no real editing. So you'll see right here with the drums. I'm gonna say a lot, so I guess just get used to that. Starting with the drums, I actually recorded about, I think, 18 microphones on this kit, and then this is what we ended up with. I usually do a lot of rooms, but on this time I just did one room, a mono room, and that's just kind of what worked for this song. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get started with the kick. So you'll see I have a live kick right. I have a live kick right here, and then a triggered kick. This triggered kick is from a sample that I took from recording the Never Comfortable EP from Northern Lights Suplex. So both of these samples, the snare sample as well, was a sample from John's kit when we recorded their EP. And that's usually how I like to do it. I will enhance with samples, but it's samples from the kit that's being recorded. So I'm just going to show you all the drum bus in its entirety. Okay, you know, it's not, I really kind of had to tame the drums. I usually like the drums to be a little bit more explosive, but for this track in particular, with it being so fast-paced and also trying to make the guitars and bass sound huge, it just didn't fit. So with the kick, there's really not a whole lot going on, but I'll show you what we got right here. Again, if you have any questions about anything, I really want for this to be an interactive experience. And I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. So yeah, if y'all have any questions, please drop them in. So with this kick, like I said, this is a sample from John's kit when we recorded their first EP, Never Comfortable. And right here, I just have this virtual channel strip, and I have a virtual channel loaded up first, and I have it driven, kind of getting a little bit of natural distortion and stuff on there, and that's really cool. And from there, I have the this EQ right here, the FGS from, all this is from Slate. Hey, what's up, Derek? I forgot I never messaged you back the other day. You said something about Tuesday. But anyway, I have the SSL. I got a high mid bump around 5K. I'm boosting some top, cutting some low mids, and I have a high pass at about 36 hertz just to get rid of some of the really deep rumble. And I have that blended. Oh, and also you'll see this on any drum track. All the drum tracks have JST clip. It's a clipper. If you don't know what a clipper is, it's kind of like a limiter. But instead of pushing the audio down when it hits the threshold, it just chops it off. You're mostly correct, Matthew. But the sample, what I was trying to say, my head's a little like, the drum sample that I used was from the exact same drum set, yes. Before we record, I'll always take samples of the kick, snare, and toms. That way, if there's a hit that's weird, or you know, there's a little section that needs some cleaning up, I can inject that sample of the same kit into the recording, and I don't have to worry about copying and pasting and bleed and stuff like that. So when I went into this and I realized the kick was just a little bit inconsistent in some spots, I went ahead and just made the decision to trigger it all together, and it is blended with the natural kick, which sounds like this. And I didn't process that the same way, so I have the natural kick doing a little bit of the low mids. I'm sure you can kind of hear it's really mid-range sounding. And on this sample, you see I have this dip in the low mids right here. The natural kick is kind of filling in that sample. The low mids sounded a little wonky on the sample, so I'm using the natural kick to supplement that. Yes, that's correct. It is blended, and thank you. And the same thing with this snare. Y'all gonna have to, like I said, y'all gotta bear with me a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this stream thing and get it working good. So the snare is the same way. The snare was from recording Northern Lights Suplex Never Comfortable EP, and I took a good sample of that, and that's what I'm using for this snare right here. So when I recorded that sample, I recorded it as a one shot. So I took it, I processed it the way that I wanted it to sound, and that way I could just drag it and drop it into a recording and not really have to do too much to it. So you hear that snare sound, all it's got is a 5 dB bump at 2K, bump in the high mids a little bit, and it's clipped, and then that's literally the whole sound. And it didn't need much. The toms, there's not too much I'm gonna have to get used to that. There's not too much going on with the toms. As you'll see, there is, he just has a 2 tom setup, and they do sound good though. And you'll see I have them trimmed up just to take the bleed out without actually having to use a gate. So for the tom, I have a pretty drastic EQ curve right here. I have this plugin, well, I'll explain that in a minute, and then I have, of course, JST clip. I usually clip toms pretty hard. It gives them a really strong attack. So you'll see right here I have this bump. It's at the fundamental of the tom. That's the note that the tom is actually playing. And then right up here, you'll see the boost. I forgot I can't point with my finger. The boost is at 76 hertz, and you'll see I'm cutting at 140 hertz. So the way EQs work is double any number is the octave of whatever note that is. So the fundamental's at 76 hertz. That's what I'm boosting to boost that bottom note. Give it a good little boost there, and then I'm cutting at 140. That's the octave of 76, whatever note that would actually be. You can look all that up. But cutting that octave leaves more room for the fundamental note to breathe, if that makes sense. And then a lot of cuts in the mids. This tom sounded really funny before with all the mids. I'll play you before and after. I don't know if you could tell how much that really cleaned it up, but it makes a huge difference. And then right here, I have, this is a Transient Designer, and it just lets you can do a lot with it, really. So I only have these 2 bands right here turned on, and I have them clipped, and I'm boosting the attack on the lows and on the low mids to give it more thump. I'm trying not to spend too much time going through this, and I want to spend more time doing a before and after kind of thing. So I'm gonna solo out the overheads and rooms and let you hear those, and then I'm gonna move on to the guitars, because we spent a lot of time dialing in guitar tones. And like I said, they're punk. We wanted to keep everything as raw as possible. So when we did the guitar tones, you know, we committed to a sound, and we pushed that sound hard through the whole thing. So let me show off the overheads and the rooms on these drums and talk a little bit about those, and then I'll jump into the guitars. So you'll see on the overheads, I'm cutting out everything below about 300 hertz. Not particularly useful for me in the overheads, especially for this song. And I made up for some of that with these rooms. So this microphone right here, the kick snare side, is what I have it labeled as. This microphone is gonna be level with the snare drum, over the kick drum, and facing the snare drum at an angle. I'll try and see if I can find a picture of it. I know I took one. All it has is a low cut too. So I have this one pan to the left, and then the room corner pan to the right. And those are just creating width. So once again, this is the full drum bus together. Yo, what's up, Dustin? It's been forever, dude. So that's pretty much the drums. There is more that I'd like to bring up, but I'm going to save that after I get through walking through the tracks. Because I'm actually rambling, which I do a lot. Okay, so these right, all of those that I just highlighted from right here to right here are all the rhythm guitars. So these rhythms, like I said, we took a lot of time dialing in the amp and moving the microphones to make sure that we got the sound that we wanted from the source, and we didn't have to rely on stuff after the fact. What's up, Malcolm? I'm glad to see you here, dude. So what we have here, you'll see I have a DI right here. I have an SM57, a SM57 off-axis, and a condenser microphone, which some of you might have followed me on TikTok. I went through the same setup on TikTok before, but I'll go over it again. So this is what I did for these specific tracks, but this is my approach almost every time. So I have a 57 pointed right where the dust cap meets the cone, right on it, about 2 inches from the grill of the speaker. I completely, I love these guitar tracks. Thank you, Jade. And then the 57 off axis is, the best thing I can do is give you an example. A visual example. So this right here is the Friedman technique. So that's what I was talking about. 57 pointing at the cap where the dust cap meets the cone, and then one at a 45-degree angle. And what you're actually doing right here is utilizing phase cancellation. And a lot of this, it's like natural EQ. You turn it on like that, and guitar attack came out. Tracks came out fresh. You're phase canceling, and you can tweak it a little bit. You can move the microphone on and off axis just a little bit more to tweak it exactly how you want it. And that's what I did tracking this. And then I have this condenser that's picking up a lot of the high mids and the higher frequencies that I wanted to hear that the 57s just don't pick up. And the same way with the DI. I tracked the DI, and that's mostly to capture the high mids and the treble frequencies that you don't really get through a 57. So I'll solo each one of these independently and let you hear them, and then I'll put them all together. That's the DI. That's the 57. That's the 57 off axis. You hear it sounds kind of funny by itself. And you'll hear the condenser is mostly treble. You put them all together though, insanely smooth. You'll see all the microphones are almost peaking at the same volumes. But look at this. So this is just a 57. You know, a lot of people mic up a cabinet with just a 57, and that's great. It'll sound good. But this is where experimenting and knowing the sound that you want really helps you with stuff like this. So you have the 57. Watch what happens when I add the Friedman technique, the off axis. It sounds a lot fuller. The low end locks with each other. Now add the condenser. The low mids clean up even more. The treble gets added, and then you add the DI. Full sound. You'll see there's no EQ at all on these tracks right here. But I did EQ them on the bus, just rolling off, making room for the bass guitar. And then this right here, is the Focusrite Red EQ. I have this on the bus, and let me show you a before and after of that. It's kind of drastic. So you see, I'm boosting everything. I've got a boost around 1.5 to 2K, so a little bit of the high mids. I'm boosting 400 hertz on the low mids, and that's to make the drums and the guitars lock in together. Because on the drums, I have a lot of that 400 hertz. I have it sucked out, and then I have it boosted in the guitars, and it's kind of making this happen. But that's probably the most drastic EQ move in this whole session. And you see I'm boosting a lot of the top. I love really mid-range guitar tones, but when you have that sparkle at the top, and you work it with the vocals really good, it lets the guitars and the vocals lock in together. And so all that exact same thing is mirrored for the right side, except I think I have a different EQ shape on this. I'm just boosting more high mids is the only thing on this, and I'm not boosting the bass. So between the left and the right guitar channels, I always try and make different EQ moves just a little bit to help have a little bit of stereo separation between the left and the right tracks, if that makes sense. So this is both the left and right guitars together. So 8 tracks in total to make up the left and right rhythms. Once again, I'm sorry if I'm being a little long-winded. It's just how it be. That's how I be. So anyway, that was the rhythm guitars. Here's what I have labeled guitar pinch. So on this specific part of the song, the guitars just weren't thick with 2 C's. It just had 1 C. So I added this track. It's a centered guitar track. I just have this amped loops. This is actually a free amp simulator. And I just tracked this extra part to run right up the middle in tandem with the left and the right tracks to add more oomph on this specific part. You'll notice the centered track is a whole different sound than the other tracks. I made it a lot more low end heavy, and I don't know if you saw, but there's automation on it, and it's just boosting that squeal. That's why it's called guitar pinch. But it just added that little bit of extra that brought the track together a little bit. All right, so those were the rhythm guitars. I'm going to show off a little bit of the harmony guitars, the little octave chords and stuff that's going on, and these were all mic'd. I'm sorry, I'm shaking my leg. These were all mic'd with the exact same setup. So a 57 off axis, and a condenser. But we did adjust the amp a lot to get it to sound how we wanted to before we tracked. Like I said, that's the main focus of working with Northern Lights is raw. I want it raw. I mean, that it's the best way for this type of music to sound, in my opinion, and thankfully they agree, and we're on the same page with sound usually. So we spent a lot of time on miking and just making sure it was good before we went into the process of recording. So here is one of the centered guitars. So you see this one I'm pretty sure what we did was completely scoop out the lows and the highs and just had mid-range, and I might have mirrored that on this also. I did. So you'll see I have the low cut pumped up to about 250. That's getting a lot of the low mids out. I have a big low mid bump at around 700 hertz, and then I'm rolling off the top end pretty aggressively. And that's just the sound that we wanted for this. This is a copy and paste of the EQ from earlier, just to keep the sound consistent. But I think this is what makes this song so, like, it makes me feel like skipping down a beach on a summer day, and this sound right here contributes to that, I believe, a lot. That low mid kind of guitar lead is just so nostalgic almost. That's all there is to that one. So see here I got guitar just, that's Justin's guitar. This is another little, I think this is the Octave Chords. So same thing here. We ironed everything out before we recorded, and it's pretty raw. Right here I am rolling off the lows again. I got that same EQ curve except a lot more high mids. I'm actually cutting the low mids to make this gel with the rhythm guitars, and a lot less treble. And then, of course, I know you heard that really long reverb tail. I have Valhalla Supermassive. It's one of my favorite reverbs, and it's not good for all applications because, like it says, it's freaking super massive. Most of the reverbs are really long, some of them like 30, 40, 50 seconds long. But when it works, it works. And this is the Splashy Synth preset. I adjusted the feedback and a couple other things, and I have the mix at about 22%. But just listen to what it does to the leads, especially in context of the mix, but I'll show it to you dry first. I mean, still the same part, but this adds so much. It really adds depth to a song where everything else is mostly dry. The only other thing that really has reverb on it is the vocals. So, you know, this and the vocals are kind of carrying the space. And then I left everything else dry pretty intentionally. And you'll see even the room tracks that usually people add in for more of, not a reverb sound, but you know, width and stuff like other things that reverb would bring. I have those really low in the mix. You'll see I have the overheads cranked -1.3 and then -14 on the rooms. I really like everything else being dry, especially for that punky kind of sound. And then you'll see I have guitar solo. Trying to make sure I'm not missing anything else. The guitar solo, this one was a little more involved as far as the sound goes, as you can see. But yeah, it's the same concept. It was the same miking technique. You see I have some of these pan just a little bit. But still 57 off access to make your Fredman technique, and then the condenser and a DI. So this is what this track sounds like. But you'll see this one is heavily processed. I really had a specific sound in mind when Justin played this part, and I didn't stop fighting until I found that sound that was in my head. So right here, you see I have what I call the wave curve. I do it a lot. It's unintentional, but I do know why I do it. It's the same thing I was explaining earlier with the toms. You know, any specific note is tied to a hertz frequency, and the octave of that is usually muddying up the note that you want to hear. So I have boosted 350, and then right here I've set a cut at 750, which isn't a complete octave, but is close enough. And then a boost again at 2500 hertz. And then you'll see right here, boosting a lot of the low mids and the lows, and then on the treble and nothing. So that's 2 EQs on this. And here's a third EQ. I've been known to do this a lot. So you see I have a boost around 600. And then I'm notching out a lot of nasally kind of whistle frequencies. Let me see if I can show you. I'll turn this EQ on and off. I'll boost one. So cutting that out allows for a lot more room in the track to breathe. You don't want to go too crazy with cutting these because your sound will start getting real sterile and it's lifeless almost. So usually I limit myself to 3 per any track that I hear, and usually I can hear them before I start cutting them. Like I'm like, okay, there's that 2500 rumble that I'm used to, which is this one. I don't know if you can actually hear it, but it cleans it up a lot, like noticeable, even though it is so subtle. I'm sorry if you could hear me swallow. And I have a little bit of reverb. You'll see on the wet, I'm only at 19%. So not really a whole lot of reverb going into it. Hearing it without even knowing that there's reverb there, you wouldn't even notice it. But that little bit is enough to create width in the track, which is what I wanted. So I'll show you a complete before and after of this sound because it's way different. So you'll see I really shaped the mid-range on that to make it sounds like Thunderstruck a little bit. Not the part, I mean the part is tapping, but as far as the sound goes. And that's all of that guitar stuff. Does anybody, did I know I didn't move too quick because I feel like I'm dragging out everything that I'm talking about, but if there's any questions, drop them down about guitars. Thank you for anybody that's watching. I truly appreciate everybody that's tuned in to watch. I had a lot of I wasn't really nervous about doing it, but I had a lot of just little preconceived notions like, well, what if this is weird, or what if it doesn't work out, which I had a lot of technical difficulties trying to get this started up today, and non-technical difficulties. But yeah, I'm really glad to be doing it, and I'm glad that at least somebody's interested. No questions about guitars, so we'll move on to the bass. The bass is a huge part of this song's sound. And I'm doing what I call my classic bass processing techniques, which consists of a bass subtrack. So I cut everything out except the sub frequencies. And then I have a bass clarity track that really focuses on the mid-range of the instrument, and then I have a bass distortion track, which it's exactly what it sounds like. distortion. So thank you, John. I'm really glad you're getting something from it. And hopefully, once I go through all of the different tracks, I'm going to put everything together and show you a little bit about how I get stuff to work together more than just shaping the individual sounds, because the sounds themselves aren't actually as important individually as how they are when they're all put together in the mix. So let me run through this bass stuff and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So right here, this is the bass subtrack, the one that's just labeled bass. If you're not using headphones or speakers, you probably can't hear this at all. It's just bass. You see, I'm cutting everything above 200 hertz, and I've got a bump at 100 hertz. So literally just sub. And then I have my bass clarity, as I call it, that's working on the mid-range. Sounds weird by itself, but you see I'm cutting everything below 200 on this, and that way the sub track and the clarity track overlaps each other just a little bit. And then I'm running this through an amp. This is actually, as you can see, the American reissue from Fender. And I'm running it through this just to get that amp tone. And then I have another EQ that's bumping around 1K. Something about the way that I mix, I always like my bass to have a little flick, as I call it, at 1K. And then I have the distortion track. And I intentionally made the sound really nasally. As you can see, it's rolled off also at 200 hertz. And I'm cutting pretty aggressively in the mid-range and then bumping the high mids. And this is the same. Whenever we did this track, I just downloaded this. So I really, really liked this plugin, and it's a free plugin, but it sounds so good. Like, if you don't have Amped Roots, the amp sim, go download it. I promise you, you can use this on almost any track. It sounds great. Yes, I did get Yuri to sleep. That's part of what held up me starting the stream, was my son wouldn't go to sleep. Okay, so let me show you the bass all together. I'll start with the sub track and I'll add on both of the other tracks just to let you hear what they're doing. Once again, if you don't have headphones in or anything, you might not be able to hear this. There's adding the clarity to it. And then there's the distortion track. So you see, all together it's adding individual elements that I'm going to lock with other pieces of the mix. So the bass sub, I'm locking in with the kick drum. The bass clarity is to really just to make it poke through the mix, and the bass distortion is to provide a locking element to the guitar tracks. So that's why I have these EQ'd the way that they're EQ'd. I have this crazy EQ on the bass distortion to make it blend with the guitar tracks, which that's why I have all these mid-range cuts on the bass track, because on the guitar tracks I'm pushing so much mid-range. There's just no room for this bass to breathe with all that mid-range in there. And that's the whole instrumental. Like I said, a lot of the mixing was taken care of more so in the planning stage than anything else. I went into this thinking, we need to use this amp, we need to use this microphone in this way. I already kind of had it played out in my head how I needed to mic everything to make it sound how I wanted to. Excuse me. So here's the instrumental all together. I'm sorry, I had to pause that. So Ryan, thank you for acknowledging the Arcos shirt. So actually the very next mix breakdown that I do is going to be of Arcos, of Jason Adams, of his song Mimir's Well. And that's going to be sometime in early January. And that mix breakdown is going to be a lot different than this one because I didn't produce or engineer that track at all. I had nothing to do with the recording. I only mixed and mastered it. So it's a totally different approach than this track. So, you know, if that interests you, I'll definitely tune in. It's going to be sometime around January 7th. I don't have an exact day, but I will post about it. But I digress. That was the instrumental in its entirety. You'll see the main thing that I was really going for with all of the moves was just making sure everything fit together. And like I said, that's why I took so much time recording, getting these guitar tracks to work out the way that I really wanted them to from the start. So a lot of moving microphones, a lot of finagling little itty bitty incremental degrees on the microphones to make the sound that I wanted. So moving on from there, we can move on to these Angelic Vocals from Miss Jade Fresh. The vocals were recorded with a Rode NT1A, and I don't know what it is, but I love that microphone, especially for female vocals. It sounds really good. So not too much going on here. I have Vox and Vox 2, so these tracks are the main vocal tracks. And you'll see I only have them separated that way. That way I can have small overlaps like this right here. You see this vocal ends and then this vocal is picking up. And it creates more of a moving, almost like a series of phrases instead of like phrase, phrase, phrase. And then for the verses, I have just a vocal double that goes right down the middle. And for the choruses, I have vocal doubles that are panned left and right to create that width and to be able to cut through all the really heavy guitars and stuff. And the way I do vocals is my main tracks, the Vox 1 and the Vox 2 that you see right here, those are raw. Not that in the sense that there's no processing at all, but there's no reverb or delay. I keep reverb and delay for the doubles exclusively to carry. I just like the main vocal to carry just pretty much straight. You'll see there's some reverb on the bus, really light. So let me move into how I process these vocals. I'll start with the main vocals. I have this plugin right here. It's called Howard Benson Vocals. If you don't know him, he has some courses online too, I think. But I know him from Nail the Mix when I used to do that. But Howard Benson Vocals, this is a great plugin. It's a channel strip, so you have everything you need in one go. And usually I use this for pre-production. That way I can only have one plugin on the vocals and just, you know, hit it and go and make small adjustments just to be able to monitor and for the vocalist to hear themselves. But in this instance, I liked how it sounded so much that I kept it for the main tracks. You'll see it starts off with the compression. Moves into the EQ. The compressor on this is preset. You can adjust the attack or release. They say it's optimized for vocals. I can't really tell what it's doing attack and release wise. I usually like to have control over that, but however it sounded on this sounded fine apparently. The EQ, you see I have small bumps at the high frequencies. It's boosting everything above 8,000 hertz. I have a boost on the high mids around 3,000, and then I'm cutting everything below 450, and it's a slight roll off. And I have the EQ running pre-compressor, so the compressor is reacting to the EQ signal, which doing vocals, I always like to have EQ before and after the compressor usually. I have the multiplier on, but it's not really doing much. The width is on, also not doing much. And you see I have the echo and the space, the reverb on, but really slight, really slight. But then that brings me to the double, and you'll see on this one, I'm compressing it even harder. I usually roll off the top end of my doubles, mostly because the trebly frequencies, if you hit a lot of or sounds like that in your doubles, and they're not exactly lined up with your main vocal take, it sounds like crap, and then you have to sit there and edit and edit and edit to get the double to fit the main vocal. And usually it's really incremental moves, and it's just very tedious. It's a lot easier to roll off the high end on here, and it works really well. You see I'm cutting a lot of high frequencies. And then, like I said before, this is what carries a lot of my effects or my vocal doubles. So right here I have the echo turned way up and the reverb turned way up. So let me show you what these sounded like before and after processing.
Dick man, you don't have to be a dick man. Blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by with a tongue tie, don't you lie.
So you saw most of what Howard Benson was doing was compression and boosting that top end on that track. And then you'll hear how saturated this double is in effects.
Man, you don't have to be a dick man. Blink between the eyes and all the
And then together.
hands. Stand by with a tongue tie, don't you lie.
So those tracks really work in tandem together to make really thick up the middle in the verses. So in the center track, it's really getting pushed by this, and then the double carry and the effects really makes that lead vocal stand out a lot more. And then you'll see right here on the chorus, it swaps over to the panned doubles, the left and right doubles. Those are doing pretty much the same thing. Yeah, it looks like I copy and pasted the double, the Howard Benson plugin just for those left and rights. And then you'll see up here, I got just slight shaping on the vocal bus. I have a vocal bus compressor. This is a bus glue from Joey Sturgis Tones. This is a great plugin. And it's really transparent if you want it to be, but I have it on squashed mode, which really glues together your main vocal and your double. But the bouncy mode would have worked really good on this track, but I just used, you know, I'm a really instinctive mixer, so when I hear something, I immediately do it, and then I don't look back, because if I do, I'll get caught up in analysis paralysis kind of thing, and I'll never leave it. I'll keep going back and saying, well, what if? And frankly, there's no time. There's just always something to do. And then the last thing on my vocal bus is a multipressor. So I believe on this specific track, I'm using this multipressor as a de-esser, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I press play.
Man, you don't have to be a dick man. Blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by with a tongue tie, don't you lie. Put your
The graphic lags a little bit behind the audio, but I think you were able to see what it does. So right here between 5,000 hertz and 20,000 hertz, I have it ducking down like a de-esser would on the top end. All those T's, S's, and some of the B's were getting ducked down. I have all these bands on, and they're all doing slightly different things, but it's really just to tame specific frequency bands once they pass a certain threshold. And here's the fun part, the harmonies. Jade is really good at writing her own harmonies, which it's not very common, which is great. But a lot of other artists don't come to me with harmonies. Usually I have to work those out with the band. But let me let you see what these sound like.
Blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by with the tongue tie, don't you lie.
You see there's not a lot of, I like the little bit of grit on some of those last lines right here. Actually make the harmonies stand out a little bit more, even though it doesn't sound perfect.
Dick man, blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by with a tongue tie, don't you lie. Put your money where your mouth is, give up all you got for some glory, cause you need it, it'll never be enough.
So that was for the verse that I just showed you, and here's the one for the chorus.
Dick man, you don't have to be, give up all you got for some glory, cause you need it, it'll never be enough. And I don't need your spotlight, I don't need your pity, whoa.
So with these, it's copied and pasted both ways. I'm hitting the input really hard on this compressor, and it's making just a little bit of distortion on the harmonies, and that's helping saturate them and blend them with the guitars and stuff a little bit better. And also, I forgot to mention at the start of this, if it sounds a little funny, I have really had to finagle a lot of this to get it to sound right, to give you, the listeners, the most transparent sound. It sounds even more weird in my headphones, but it's the way I had to set up the stream. So now with all that being said, all of that, very minimal processing. I mean, it looks like a lot, but is very minimal. So now I'll move into a lot more of what I talked about earlier, which is letting the tracks work together. So right here, on the bass bus, I have a plugin called Track Spacer. This plugin is freaking phenomenal. But let me show you what it does. So I'm sure anybody who's worked in audio in any capacity has at least heard the term sidechain compression. And that's what this plugin right here is doing, except it's a 32 band EQ that serves as a sidechain compressor. So right here I have it sidechained to the kick drum. And what I mean by 32 band EQ is that this plugin looks at the kick drum and says, okay, you got 50 hertz as your main bump, and then you got a little bit of high end, whatever the track is. So this plugin looks at that, and on the bass track, whatever track you assign this plugin to, it ducks just the EQ curve of what you're sidechaining instead of just a straight volume duck. So with traditional sidechain, you sidechain the kick drum to the bass track, and every single time the kick drum hits, the whole bass track gets turned down in its entirety. With this plugin, only the main frequencies of the kick drum are getting turned down in the bass track, and all the other frequencies remain untouched. I won't really be able to show you a before and after, but if I turn up the amount a lot, you'll be able to hear the effect. But you can see right here what it's doing. It's really just ducking those sub frequencies and a little bit of the high mids. Because I didn't want the bass track to just keep ducking and ducking and ducking. I wanted the bass track to be full and open, and using that sidechain like that really let it be full without killing the track. I forgot to go over this too, but right now, anybody that just tuned in, I'm going across the track and showing you how the elements are working together. You'll see right here on this guitar bus, I have all the guitars going to this guitar bus, and I have track spacer on this also. And what this track spacer is assigned to is the snare. So let me, you'll be able to see on this graph what frequencies are being turned down. This spike right here is around 200 hertz. That's the main fundamental of the snare drum. And I was really just trying to make sure that that 200 hertz gets turned down every single time the snare drum hits. You'll really be able to hear it again if I solo it and turn it up. I will also have to solo the snare drum for that to work. But you'll notice that the snare drum and the guitar both have a lot of room to breathe, and especially when you have really punchy drums. If you make them really punchy, you'd think that they'll cut automatically, but it's not the case. You really have to make sure that you're making room in your EQ spectrum for all your sounds to stand out the way that you want them to. And it's really hard to do that sometimes. But that, along with some of this bus processing, is really some of the sauce of how all the different tracks on this song work together. So I'm going to go over a little bit of my drum bus processing. This right here is my secret sauce for drum buses. This plugin sounds freaking great. So let me play the drums for you again, and I'll show you what this compressor is doing. So it's really just a compressor, but it's a very aggressive compressor. And you see it's not doing a whole lot. It's not compressing a lot. Maybe 3 dB on the snare, but it's not doing a whole lot. It's more so the attack and release that's built into this plugin that makes it work like that, and makes it sound so aggressive. And then, of course, JST clip is on everything drum related, no matter what. But that's really most of everything. The only thing that I haven't went over so far is the master bus, which this plugin here has been grayed out forever. So again, with the whistle tones, taking out some of those harsh resonances that were going through the track. I have the SSL EQ for the bus compressor. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind. Then Fresh Air. This is a great plugin. I'm not doing a whole lot with it either. And then I don't know how clip got put on here when it was supposed to be FGX. I think I did that while I was setting up this session by accident. So let me show you the before and after of that mastering stage.
Man, you don't have to be a dick, man. Blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by at a tongue tie.
So I actually don't know what that sounded like to y'all because I'm listening through a different output, but I can definitely explain it. So like I said, the whistle tones, let me show you what a couple of these sound like.
Man, you don't have to be a dick, man. Blink between the eyes and all the powers in your hands. Stand by at a tongue.
So you can really hear that. It's just it's a buildup of frequencies, but it really takes away from the track, especially when there's a big buildup. And then doing that before EQ, the compressor really ensures that everything's going to work together the way that it should. And that way those whistle tones aren't hitting your compressor hard or anything like that. Give me 1 second, guys. I gotta run use the bathroom. I'm back. That's pretty much the whole track though. I was trying to just see if anybody had any questions. There's a couple watching on YouTube. It's hard to keep jumping back and forth between the lives. Hey Dennis, what's up, man? The only thing I didn't go over in the mastering chain was the fresh air. It really just adds a little bit of top end, which I would normally do from like an SSL EQ, but since moving completely in the box, I really like this plugin. This is also a free plugin. It used to be paid, but it's free. If you don't have this plugin, it is fantastic. And then I have FGX. This is a limiter, a hard limiter. And you'll see the compressor moving. So I have a little bit of compression and then just bringing up the output volume a little bit from the gain on this. And once again, this is a before and after of just the mastering stage. So it's not like a make or break. You know, a lot of people, I think, feel like mastering is like from nothing to like way different. Mastering for me, as long as I'm mixing the track also, is usually just really small moves that really kind of tie everything together. But that really is everything. Like I said, a lot of this song was just in the recording stage, knowing the vision that we wanted for it, and then executing that through the engineering stage. So when it got to mixing and mastering, it was pretty close. All right, Dennis, have you a good dinner. Happy anniversary, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. But yeah, like I said, the guitars especially were the driving force of this song, and getting those locked in and then fitting everything else around it is kind of what made this song what it is. But thanks everybody for tuning in. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Ryan, Matthew, John. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. I'm glad that y'all are able to get something from it. And I believe the next mix breakdown is going to be very helpful for a lot of people. Because like I said, that's Arco's, Jason Adams, and that is a song that I didn't engineer or produce. So the raw tracks, I had no shape or control over how they were. They just were how they were. And I had to deal with that and mix it and master it to what my standards is. And that mix is a lot different than this one. It's way more processed. So that will definitely be a journey to show y'all how I got the tracks from start to finish. So tune in for that one. I will drop a date soon. And like I said, I appreciate all of you tuning in. I actually thought this would take a lot longer to do, but it worked out pretty well. So thank you all. Love you all, and I'll see y'all in the next one.